Devils Like to Dance, Chapter 15, Evil Eyes at Warwick. Time has passed since then, and everything resumed like usual. Alois was his normal self, his tail and horns now gone. The only thing that stayed was the black color of his fingernails that all demons appeared to have. He still needed small amounts of food and sleep, but then again, most baby demons did. Ciel and Sebastian were glad to have that mystery solved, both of them. The perpetrators of the Sudoku thrill killings were all apprehended after that night on the Thames, even the young woman who had disappeared at the potential crime scene. Ciel had detained her while the other two men weren't looking, while Alois took his place. The boys were glad to be done with the case and were now spending their time trying to educate the blonder of the two. His reading had improved immensely, and he could now find jolly old England on the map. Nevertheless, the fact remained that Alois would have to go to school sometime. "Today's the day," exclaimed the blonde, entering the room. Yes, today was the day that he was going to go to school for the very first time. "Today's the day I get my way. I'm going to play at school today," he chanted. His slate-headed friend already had his uniform on. The boy wore a black blazer with dark blue trimming and a matching tie of the same hue. "Calm down, it's not that great of a place," he said. "But Ciel, I want to find out what the place you go to every day is like." The blond boy struggled to put on his own tie. His was dark purple, as was the trimming on his blazer as well as his knee socks. As opposed to the other boy's pants, Alois chose to wear black shorts that stopped to about mid-thigh. It did not disobey the school's dress code. Students were permitted to wear shorts as long as they went down to at least mid-thigh. However, this was intended for girls. Nothing said boys couldn't. It was just assumed that they wouldn't. But then again, Warwick Academy had never met Alois Trancey. It was a private school where most of these children of the rich went to receive an education. Almost everyone who attended was the son or daughter of someone important, from famous actors to politicians. Eventually, Alois gave up trying to tie his tie on his own and got Sebastian to do it for him. Ciel refused to get him a clip-on. He would say that they are tasteless. "Fine. Just don't whine when you find out how boring it really is." He said this even though he knew he would do so anyway. One does not simply tell Alois Trancey what to do. You can try, but that doesn't mean he'll listen. Sebastian drove them to school, happy to finally have the house to himself. He certainly wouldn't have to worry about Alois trashing the place during the day. At the same time, he was wondering when the school was going to call and about what. Would he take the hamster in the science room out of its cage and lose it? Would he throw things at the other children? Would he push them downstairs or disrupt the class with rude jokes? There were so many possibilities, but it wasn't his problem. The boys exited the vehicle, and the blonde was immediately spellbound. There were children everywhere, all dressed in the same uniform as he. The color of the trimming and ties, however, varied, as the children were allowed to customize their uniforms this way. The school building was massive. It reminded him of the ridiculous size of the mall, or perhaps a castle. "Wow," was all he could really say as he gawked at the structure. It was most impressive. "Come on," said his rather serious friend, grabbing his shoulder to guide him in the direction he wanted him to go. "Let's go to the office and get your schedule." The two walked across the lawn alongside other students. Some swarmed in circles in their designated territories to socialize. Some of the students were staring at the boys, partially due to the fact that the blonde was the new kid, and partially because they were confused on the subject of his gender. The slender boy looked rather effeminate, however, had a slightly boyish walk. Ciel was effeminate looking as well, so this led to much confusion around the schoolyard. Alois received his schedule, and after Ciel had pulled some strings, ended up in many of the same classes as the Phantom Hive boy. His first class was history, and the brothers in Demonity walked into the classroom long before the bell had rang. Eyes were on the now spontaneously nervous blonde, and whispers filled the room. Ciel plopped down in his usual seat on the edge of the middle row. Sit here, he said, pointing at the seat next to him. The flaxen-haired lad did as he was instructed, relieved that he would at least get to sit next to his friend. Is it always this loud in the morning? Always, Ciel replied, his visible eye now focused on what was behind the blonde. He pointed at the trio across from his companion and he. See that bunch over there? Yeah, the blonde said, following the other boy's finger. The large one with the dark hair and the plain face is Travis. His mother runs a company that designs and sells jewelry, and his dad is a professional wrestler. He pointed out, now turning the blonde's attention to the Indian boy next to the first. That's Preston. He's the heir to a big electronics and technology company. Your phone? They made it. See the plain-looking kid on his right? He's the son of a politician who's currently running for office. Huh, the blonde responded, obviously confused as to why he's being told this. You'll need to know them. They're pretty big around here. You be nice to them and they'll treat you well. All right, anybody else important? The short of the two smiled and pointed to a duo in the corner. Those two? They aren't particularly popular or anything. It's just that they're useful. Useful, you say? Grinned the blonde. Go on. The boy with the skull hat playing at PSP is Aldrich, the son of a big medical supplier. He'll tell you anything you need to know if you give him a pixie stick. Why a pixie stick? His parents don't want him to have candy. It isn't healthy. He crinkled his nose and furrowed his brow in disgust at that last part. Ciel being an advocate for candy and all. Preventing people from eating sweets is a crime of a most disturbing nature. The girl next to him is called Sonia. Her mother is a teacher here. He looked at the blonde. You'll see her in English class. How does that count as useful? Be friendly with her and English gets easier, Ciel said plainly. Alois was hesitant for a moment, as if trying to summon the courage to say his next piece. I'm not so sure about this school thing anymore. Ciel blinked and looked at the usually enthusiastic boy in front of him. He was unused to seeing the blonde behave so shyly. He watched the boy fidget in his seat for a while, looking at his hands. You'll be fine, he said, and eventually, after all, you're with the Ciel Phantom Hive. He smiled his usual small smile. If you didn't know the boy, you would easily miss such a slight reassuring gesture. This was interrupted by the teacher entering the room. The man had an angular jaw, reddish-brown hair, and a scowl, but that was just his face. Mr. Irons was a rather strict teacher. Some say he once gave a kid detention for 3 days for coughing too loudly. Some say he could tell what you were afraid of just by looking at you, and would use it to his advantage. Some say he is secretly related to Severus Snape. All that we know is that he's scary-looking, brash, and his name is Mr. Irons, and he's cold as steel. Morning, class. Sit down, shut up, and get ready. His voice was loud, and it was rough. Alois did not like this man already. We have a new student. Everybody say hello to Alois Trancey, he said, gesturing at the boy. All eyes were on the blonde again. He felt like he should say something, but wasn't sure what. Suddenly he remembered a character from Little Britain, one of the sketch comedies he enjoyed so much. With the most serious face he could muster, he exclaimed in his voice-pitched girly boy voice, Don't be giving me evils. At that moment, the entire room erupted in laughter. Almost every student was now laughing their asses off at the flaxen boy's remark. At that moment, the teacher knew that he was going to have his hands full with this problem child. And it was that moment that Ciel's suspicions were confirmed. Alois was a class clown. Chapter 16. Your tie looks stupid. In the Warwick Commons area, there are couches that the students would sit on, usually to socialize or to do schoolwork, and vending machines dispensing various snacks. The Phantom Hive boy was sitting on one of these couches with a pile of snacks in the seat next to him. The boy was working on his laptop, managing the Quantum Toy Company's stocks and resources in a room decorated in school colors with the mascot, a griffin on practically everything, when a certain blond boy came up behind him and covered his revealed eye. Guess who? Eloise, quit it, said Ciel in his annoyed tone. The blonde removed his hand, no longer obstructing the other's vision. Oh, you're no fun, he said, wrapping his arms around the other boy's neck and looking over his shoulder to get a better view of what he was doing. Ciel knew that the blonde didn't mean anything by it, but Eloise could be very touchy. The Phantom Hive was unused to physical contact and was uncomfortable when Eloise would do things like this. The boy didn't seem to understand the concept of personal space, but Ciel was not entirely sure how to deal with this, as the blonde didn't seem to take much notice, even after being told not to do so. I know, I'm simply one hell of a fun killer, he said, rolling his eye. In response, the blonde simply giggled, his usual girlish giggle at the obvious reference to Sebastian. Oh, so it's true, said a voice behind the blonde. The new kid is a complete poof. Just look at those shorts. Eloise turned his head to get a look at the bully. He saw another blonde boy who obviously not a natural blonde, judging by the brown peeking out of his roots, parted ever so meticulously perfectly down the middle. The other boy's uniform was primed and pressed almost without a single wrinkle. He snorted as a reply. And the boy in the pink tie, checking out my arse, isn't a poof? Eloise was now familiar with this term. It's apparently a rude way of referring to a homosexual, according to Google, and Eloise had just forced the boy's taunt back on him. Ciel held back his chuckle, while Eloise didn't bother, as the faux blonde's face turned as pink as his stupid tie. I am not, he shrieked, his voice cracking a bit. At least I'm not the one hanging all over another man in public. Eloise simply stood there and stroked the hair of the boy in question. Jealous? The trancy boy said. You just want to pet Ciel too, don't you? He might let you if you ask nicely. Ciel just tried his best to ignore this, but the other boy's reactions were hilarious. One thing he and the trancy boy had in common was the fact that they both enjoyed messing with people and seeing them upset, so he was willing to endure the attention a bit longer. The other boy was outraged that he would even suggest such a thing. He blew up. My father will hear about this. Then he stormed off. He sounds like Draco Malfoy. Yes, he does. Ciel shooed the other male's hands off of his head. His father's an actor, and he thinks that makes him special. But he is special. He's special just like everyone else here. He said the natural blonde, smirking at his own cleverness. Yes, the boy could be clever. Apparently he just chose not to. This fact confounded the brunette, while he finds the blonde's goofy antics amusing at the same time. He moved his mountain of sweets over so his brilliant and idiotic friend could sit next to him. I liked how you handled him. Nice moves. Yes, but it's hard to fight in a battle of wits with someone who is completely unarmed. You stole that. So sue me. Eloise sat down next to the Phantom Hive. He was young, you know. About me being gay? Yeah, I know, Ciel lied. He had his suspicions from the beginning. What with all the booty shorts and such, it was oddly disheartening to have the blonde tell him wrong for some reason, unbeknownst to him. Pondering this, he didn't even notice the fair-haired boy leaning in close to his ear to whisper a smirk. I'm really bisexual. What?